What's up, poker YouTube? Welcome back to another How to Beat Live Low Stakes Poker video. Today's topic, we're going to talk about pot control. So this is a topic or a concept that I think is a little bit misunderstood. I think the word is overused actually a little bit, especially when it pertains to live low stakes games where, max exploitative poker is going to be usually the best strategy. So for those of you that maybe aren't as familiar with this concept or topic, for those that are, a real little refresher. Obviously, pot control, controlling the size of the pot, much easier to do when in position. Keeping in mind stack to pot ratio, like how deep you are when you enter the hand, if you're multi-way or heads up. All these things are factors that you have to take into account when it comes to if you want to play a large pot, or if you want to, quote, pot control and play a medium to smaller size pot. Now, I'll give you a quick example where it would make sense to try to manipulate the pot in the action in a manner that would dictate pot control. Let's say that a couple players limp. Let's say you guys have 100 big blinds effective. You raise with king, queen, offsuit in late position. They both call. Flop is, let's say, queen, 6-5, rainbow. They both check. You bet. Let's say they both call. And let's say a 7 comes on the turn. So queen, 6-5. They both call. Your bet, 7. So queen, 6-5, 7. A card that certainly can be in either, if not both players' range, as far as hands that could be pocket 7s, could be 7-6. Those are both hands that are now ahead now. A couple of the gutters get there, make straights on the turn. If you guys are multi-way in a spot like this, and especially if you're deep, I can see definitely arguments for checking back, realizing your equity by taking a free card instead of possibly facing check raise and putting yourself in a really tough spot. However, if your opponents, and this is going to be the case in most live low stakes populations, are not capable of bluffing you at an optimal level, or over bluffing if they're maniacal or hyper aggressive, if most players are going to be pretty ABC, pretty passive, they are generally, if they're going to be very ABC, as I alluded to, they are only going to check raise you with value. They're almost never going to check raise you with like semi bluffs or bluffs often enough to make you really worry about overplaying your king queen, your top pair, with your second kicker, and at the same time, goes along with overplaying but under realizing your own equity, especially in position, which can be a disaster. But if they're never going to bluff raise you, and by never I mean just not often enough to really worry about it, but if you do have a player that just literally will never bluff raise you in that spot, it makes sense to actually continue betting and folding exploitively to check raises, because what will happen is they generally almost always will call with worse, or they'll potentially fold some equity, and it's fine if they fold. If you take down the pot there and they don't continue with something much weaker, or if they do have some form of equity and they just don't want to see a bigger future bet on the river, then you're obviously you are applying some leverage there with your turn barrel. But yeah, like if I know my opponents are incapable of playing optimal or bluffing me often enough in spots like that, then I'm just going to keep betting. Keep betting until they basically tell you to stop. The whole concept of pot control, I think, is blown way out of proportion, especially pertaining to live low stakes games. Now, the same will go for if your opponent bets in a particular spot and you believe that you can raise for value. And if it's, let's say it were a good and or aggressive player, let's say if you raise and you guys are a little deeper, you think it might be a little thin, because if your opponent plays back at you with a 3-bet, it puts you in a really tough spot. You think you might not be able to get quite enough that's worse to call. Then obviously that's, a situation where you're probably playing a little bit closer to GTO, playing a little more balanced if need be. But again, in live low stakes environments, you don't really have to adhere to that. Whenever I have, not whenever, but like the vast majority of the time, if I have value combos and I believe I can get worse hands to call, and I think that my opponent's never generally going to 3-bet bluff me, then I might as well put in that raise right now, because I'm losing out on value on my combo right there in the moment. But also what ends up happening is if my opponent does rarely have the nut hand or like the nutty hand or a better hand at that point, and they let me know with that 3-bet, I'm actually going to save quite a bit of money. So I don't want to mix this up or confuse this with, well, let's bet fold to see where we're at, or let's raise to see where we're at. We're not doing that. This just happens to be a byproduct of us doing this, is the fact that our opponents play so straightforward in these really kind of high leverage, these aggressive spots, that we get perfect info and we get to play perfect poker. So again, whenever you guys are in doubt and you think that, okay, maybe I should check here and peel one off or take one off, maybe I should try to manage the size of the pot here, it's not that you might not be correct in quite a few spots, but you need to understand what kind of population, and then more importantly, if you have the right, or if you have enough info, if you have the right read on a player, if you know it's a more passive player. But generally, even if you don't know, if you're in a 1-2, 1-3, or even a 2-5 game, you really should err on the side of aggression and go bet fold and raise fold, and really scrap the concept of pot control until your opponents tell you to stop, because you're losing out on too much value. You're going to, in a lot of these spots, when you stay aggressive, you're going to force your opponents to under-realize their equity. And poker is a game of essentially realizing equity. If you can over-realize your equity the majority of the time, and that's why you want to play in position the majority of the time, unlike your opponents who are limping and cold calling and playing too many pots out of position, they will be under-realizing their equity. So that's where win rates will differentiate significantly. So if you guys have any questions or comments, let me know, of course, in the comment section. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and then come visit us over at archcitypoker.com, where we will have more content like this. See you guys in the next video. Thanks.